Welcome to the Adams State Football Podcast. I'm your host, AJ Webb. It's January in Alamosa. The spring semester has started. It's cold as hell, but the 2023 Grizzly campaign is heating up, hitting the weight room, knocking out mat drills, trudging through the negative 20-degree weather to get their strength, speed, and weight proper for the season. The fearless leader of the off-season programming is a former Adams State tight end, director of strength and conditioning, Brady. In this interview, we talk about his beginnings coming out of Craig, Colorado, how he fell in love at first lift with strength and conditioning, his playing and professional experiences that have helped him translate his bachelor's degree in exercise science and his MBA in leadership into preparing the Adams State football team for the gridiron. And now, a 6'1", 240-pound tight end, the Sultan of the Steel, the dictator of the domain of pain, number 43, Brady Connor. Before we get started, let's take a pause for the claws. It's been 1 year since we published the first episode of the Adams State Football Podcast. Over the past year, we've listened to the great stories of Adams State players, coaches, and friends of the program, and we're knocking on the door of 1,000 listens. Having proven the concept that a podcast can help to engage Adams State football alumni, we're gearing up to increase the consistency and quality of the project. For those of you that have tuned in, I can't thank you enough, but the work's not done, and we need your help. We need as many ears and eyes to secure resources to advance the mission of celebrating this program. You can help by listening, subscribing, sharing, reviewing, and rating this content. So text, direct message, and share these episodes with those teammates, roomies, lifting partners, and family members. You can keep up to date with the project and the program with our Adams State Football Facebook group. Thank you all for your support. Go Adams State. Brady Connor, the mic is hot. We are sitting here in the House of Steel, the Grizzly Powerhouse. What do you call this place?
Domain of Pain.
The Domain of Pain. I love it. I was blessed to be able to spend some time in this weight room. We finished moving that leg press from upstairs. So we moved that. Everything else got auctioned off, and then the football players were here for that summer. We moved it all out. There was like 3 weeks where we had to go lift at Alamosa High School, and then season started, and then so my senior year, I got to use this stuff. It's great stuff. I think it's built in New Mexico too.
Yep.
This company,
yeah,
Samson.
So it's Samson. It's all outfitted by them, and they're in Albuquerque, Santa Fe.
The pull-up bars are still as sharp as the day.
Oh yeah.
Right? I mean, you are not losing any grip there.
Yep.
So testament to the Samson, powerful Samson strength and conditioning equipment. But this is the Adams State Football Podcast. I'm celebrating your career. You're also I'll let you introduce yourself and your title here. But we're also going to update alum. We're going to fire some players up, especially when it comes to getting in here, getting jacked, getting tan, getting ready for summer, getting ready for the season. So give me your title, the years you played,
Okay.
your number, and your position.
Okay. Yeah. So currently director of strength and conditioning here. So I oversee all the teams' programming, implementation of programming. Only teams I'm not working with is track and field and cross country, and that's Gersick still.
Right.
So Gersick's still around.
Powerful Matt Gersick.
Yep. So my playing years here, I came in 2011. I redshirted, and then split time in 2012, and then started those next 3 years. So I was here 13, 14, 15.
Very nice.
I was number 43, played tight end, dabbled a little bit in fullback in Rosenbaugh's offense. We went to a kind of a tribe set my senior year, so I got to play a little bit of fullback. Probably more my natural position, honestly. And then special teams as well. So I was on all special teams also.
Awesome. Did you ever get propositioned to come to the dark side?
So funny enough, when I was getting recruited, I thought statistically better on defense. I went to Moffett County High School up in Craig, Northern Colorado, small school, so playing both ways, and it was, If they're a run-heavy team, straight up the middle, I was playing middle linebacker that week. If they like to go to the edge, I might be playing sniffer back that week. You know, so played various positions through high school. But I just, I thought I was more natural at a linebacker DN type position. And my last year with Heaton, I was rooming with Connor Stevens, who was
former defensive end, former strength and conditioning expert.
And he's a solid player, man. Just a great guy. And Heaton kept trying to put weight on me. Just, oh, we need to get you bigger. Oh, we need to get you stronger. Oh, we need to get you bigger. And I remember that spring running like 3 or 4 routes over 20 yards and just being like, oh, man, like my legs are bricks. There's no way I can do this. And he kept telling me, I think they're going to switch you to the end. I think they're going to switch. But it just never.
And up until that point, I'm sure that you had seen plenty of Marty Heaton pursuit going on.
Oh, yeah.
Because that defensive end's got the 2 and the backside 5, which I think is the longest average. I don't know. I might have my cone averages wrong, but as a former defensive end, I ran plenty of them backside 5s. It ain't no joke.
Yep.
Especially you get 3 of them bad boys in a row. All right. Well, I'd be curious to unpack some more of that. Definitely want to unpack kind of your era. I might be wearing some gear. Is this your era of gear?
That's probably right at the end or my first year of coaching type era right there. So
the
camo though, that was Heaton, man. He was all about the camo too. So
yeah, for sure. I got these from our Cease the Beast. You got to interact with the Beast, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, national treasure. I love that, man. Let's go back. Tell me about Craig, because I don't believe we're talking about a very large town. So tell me about Craig. Is that where you were born?
Yeah, yes, sir. So yeah, it's very similar to Alamosa in the sense of population. The college here, there's more diversity here, but it's just kind of your blue collar town.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the coal mines there. You have the power plant there, and that is a big part of the people that are financially stable in the area.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's majority if you're working at the schools or you have your own business, kind of like here. Then those are the families that are doing well. It's a small area. It was bigger when I was growing up. It was kind of booming at that time. And then now as people are trying to push away from coal and stuff like that, it slowly started kind of shrinking down. When I was there, we were 3A. Now we're 2A.
Okay.
In sports and stuff like that. So
blue collar town. I bet you
So.
sports were an important part of that town. What are the first sports you start playing?
Early on? My first ones?
Your first exposure to organized team sports?
Baseball.
Baseball?
Yeah, I played a lot of summer league baseball and stuff like that.
How old were you when you started?
5.
Wow,
so
that's awesome.
Yep, 5 years old when I started playing baseball. Hockey as well. I want to say I was either 6 or 7 when we started that, and we actually had, and it was full contact Pee-wees for football.
Yeah.
So that was, you had your 1st and 2nd grade compete, 3rd and 4th grade compete, 5th and 6th grade, 7th and 8th, and then into your high school.
That's got to give you. That's got to give you a little bit of an edge there. I mean, I started playing baseball in 6th grade. There was opportunities, but I just wasn't involved in it. But that was my first exposure to organized sports. Started playing in football in middle school in 7th grade. And now my boy, I'm just trying to get him exposed to as much stuff as I can early as on, like I was still learning the rules, and so your first exposures to baseball, but also football pretty early. When do you get, are you in 1st grade when you first play football?
Yeah, yep. Woo. So, and we were doing, and it was contact, man. They had rules, particular rules. I was a big kid growing up, so I couldn't play running back.
Yeah,
couldn't, nothing like that. So I was playing line. So I was playing line all the way up through 6th grade, and then started playing running back and stuff like that in 7th, 8th, and then through high school.
So you transitioned into a skill type position where they're like, oh, okay, bigger body, but got some athleticism, so we're gonna put the rock in your hands.
Yep.
There we go.
Yep.
So when is it? Do you stick with all those sports all the way into high school? I imagine small school that coaches might have been arm wrestling in the break room over you. What was that like? What other sports did you play in high school?
So high school story, a little, not super different. I think all of us that pad up, we have our scars.
Yeah.
And so freshman year, I had a very rare injury. I dislocated my collarbone off my sternum instead of just breaking it. So ended up having surgery that year. And then my sophomore year, was playing varsity ball, and we were in Delta. playing Delta at their homecoming, and I had a contact blowout to my ACL, MCL, medial lateral meniscus, and so I probably would ended up doing track and field and basketball both of those years.
But you were rehabbing?
But I was rehabbing. And then, junior year, it was football, and it was fine. And then we were doing tryouts for basketball, and hardwood just tore me up. So I decided to take that year off. And then I wish I would have done track and field that year. If looking back at it now, just mechanics and everything like that, it's crucial.
Some explosivity.
Yeah.
Like I threw shot and disc and ran the open 4. I was like, 1 lap, not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
One
of the worst events.
I did it my senior year just to train, just to do, stick with cleans and stuff like that, just to train speed.
Yep.
So you wish you would have done track?
Yeah, absolutely.
Seems like one of the sports, like if you're thinking about playing college football, you're in high school, you're kind of serious about baseball, maybe you like it, maybe you got some buds, but if you're going to do a sport to prepare you for college football, track seems like a pretty good one, huh?
Yep. It's just running mechanics and everything like that. You're never really running in a straight line on the field, that's very very rare, but just having mechanics.
Right. Well, when you are running in a straight line,
you
being efficient and being explosive, because that you still get the start.
Yep.
Right. The start is super important. My understanding is in a track event. So same thing when you got your hand in the dirt.
Yep, absolutely. No, it just transitions well. A lot of the athletes we get in here that right away they're easy not only to work with on the field, but in the weight room, it seems like they have some kind of track and field background where just, in sprinters especially, it's so mechanically driven, and that's not throws, same thing, except for it's all rotational power. So it doesn't, it's awkward compared to the weight room or on a field.
Right.
But it seems like those guys are the ones that transition very, very quickly into
make into some good footwork.
Yep.
And understand violent hip explosivity.
Yes.
Yeah. So, how about your senior year? Do you are you able to go through there? I don't even want to ask, but injury-free? Do you get to play some other sports? What's that like?
Yeah, so I obviously played football senior year, and then I did play basketball, and I was injury-ridden in high school. We were in our 7th practice, so we're about to, everyone's about to pretty much become eligible to play a game, and I was a 4 actually, and I'm not that tall. I'm on a good day all of 6 foot, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
And smaller school though, and I just took a power dribble, took a step, guy was backside, help side, and we went foot to foot, and I rolled the crap out of my ankle, and so I ended up tearing some ligaments in it. I played the season on it, but and it was still, we had a good season and everything like that. But it's one of those things, hindsight 2020. I'm talking to schools in the RMAC. I've got a little bit of interest, and then you're like, well, I'm going to go play.
I want to pause you right there, and I want to go back just a little bit, right? So you said you were a bigger kid, right? And I would imagine that you were introduced. I mean, so what's your first exposure to lifting? Let's start painting that picture while we're at it too.
Yep.
Were you guys taking it serious then, Craig? And did you start bringing in the nutrition component? Like, when we say, so your freshman year, what are your measures? You rolling in about 5'9", 5'10", about 160?
I was about 180.
180. That's a pretty.
So
pretty
I
solid
was,
freshman.
where I hit my big, because I was a chubby kid, and there's no way around it, man. I just was. And 5th and 6th grade, I'm probably 5 feet tall, $150, and then 7th grade, I'm about 5'10" and 160. So I just stretched.
Okay, so you grew into it.
Yep. And then 8th grade, I'd put on about 10 pounds, hadn't grown a ton, and then I hit another spurt, through high school. But to get back, into lifting. First set, I'll never forget it. First, set of equipment that I got was from Kmart. We had a Kmart in Craig, and it was one of the sand weights. So it had the sand inside of it, the skinny Olympic bar.
How old are you at this time?
I was 7th grade.
So you're 7th grade.
Yep.
So you're like pops or mom or whoever it was. You say, hey, we gotta get this thing.
Yep. And so that that was kind of I can't remember if it was birthday or Christmas or what, whatever it was. But, and, you're just doing the basic stuff. Yeah, I lived in with a walking distance of the school, so we get done with school when we weren't in season and stuff like that, and it'd be me and 3 or 4 buddies, and we go bench, and we go do some curls.
Yeah, that's what's
and
up.
We go do some push-ups and, some crunches and very, very basic stuff. And then I got into it, by that time.
That peanut butter and jelly, it works.
Yep.
That peanut butter and jelly, it works. That base, yeah, for sure. So that's rad because me, the first time messing around with any kind of resistance stuff, I played baseball a little bit later. I was a catcher. I could block the piss out of the plate. I was dirty. I worked hard. Noodle arm, mediocre batter. So I took like the plastic covered concrete 9.5 pound dumbbell, and I would do off my bunk bed. I would do flies, and I would do like raises and front raises, and then I'd yank on that, and but that was when I started figuring out I could impact my performance on the field if I did these other things, which basically sentenced me to a life of doing more and spending more time than everyone else to be as good as everybody else, which is frustrating. But it sounds like you started pushing the steel pretty early.
Yep. No, it was, love at first lift, really. Ooh. And so, I got into it 7th grade, 8th grade. For Christmas, I asked for a Smith machine, and it was one of the ones from like Sam's Club, which for those of you that don't know Craig, it does not have a Sam's Club. So we had to drive to Junction, and it had an Olympic bar on it. It had the Smith machine bar. It had some cheap fly for the chest, cable row, and cable pull down. And I did that, for about a year. And that's when I finally started putting on size. But, I was lucky. I hit a growth spurt early, and then getting into it that early. By the time, I was a freshman, I was sitting right about the same height I am now, about 6 foot. And, it was about 180, 185. And had already in that transition in that summer, we had a couple seniors that had and juniors that had kind of taken me under their wing, and hey, we're going to football weights, and you're coming with us.
That's what's up.
And so, I had guys like JT Haddon, who he played O-line at CSU Pueblo.
Shout out to the boys.
Yeah. So he played at CSU Pueblo, and he was on staff these last 5-6 years at West Texas A&M, doing O-line and assisting in offensive coordinating position and stuff like that. So, he took me under his wing super, super early, and he was a big boy. I mean, he's 6'3", 240, and he's playing running back, and it's like you get around a guy like that pretty early, you're going to put on some size and some strength. And
Definitely.
So by that time, 8th grade is done. I'd kind of outgrown the Smith machine. Sorry, Mom and Dad, it didn't last long. But we had it down there forever. But, then it was, I started, lifting at the high school, and also on top of it, lifting at our local gym.
Now, what else was guiding you in this, right? Because I just had the way, I did some stuff I made up, didn't have internet in my house in 2000 when we're doing that. What kind of information, were you buying up Muscle and Fitness? Like, what was what was feeding you these ideas?
I've always been kind of, type A. But try to be as calculated as I could. As a 15, 16-year-old kid, we were on the Bigger, Faster, Stronger program in high school, and it was a lot better than I gave it credit for when I was 15. I thought I knew it all. I thought more was more. We're lifting 3 times a week for an hour, but I want to lift, 7 days a week, twice a day.
Okay.
And, so I did. We I'm old or young enough that we had, computer, internet, all that stuff. And so I just started searching up, random things. I had Arnold Schwarzenegger's encyclopedia of, whatever it is, bodybuilding. And it started off every day, we do pull-ups, dips, warm-up. Then we, start on bench, and we do rows, and we, do overhead press. And it was all bread and butter stuff. We didn't the guys I was, training with outside of the high school, we didn't really enjoy the curls and the triceps and the calves. We wanted to do 4 sets of 20 on squat and throw up. And I was blessed, man, with the guys that I had in my age group, and then even the one below me and the one below them, really good in terms of, core values. Their parents raised them to be tough.
Yeah.
We wanted to go in there and get after it. And so, I tried to pull as much. I kind of was the ringleader at the time, tried to pull as much information as I could. And we got better at, programming, I should say.
Yeah.
It wasn't much, periodization going on. But
Right.
from, my freshman to my senior year. But we had good, there was just good people in that facility too, to where, Linscomb.
So is that your coach, your strength and conditioning
Yeah.
coach?
So our D coordinator was Ron Linscomb. He's also the wrestling coach up there for a long period of time. And his son Matt was 2 years ahead of me. He was our quarterback, and his brother Travis, was kind of your all-state wrestler. Guy had, a 12-pack, which is just like, he's just like insanely.
Got muscles on his teeth.
Yeah, he's insanely cut up, super, super strong, and he just got it. And he was another guy that, in the community kind of took us under his wing. And they had Dan Linscomb, was in their family. So Scum was the strength and conditioning coach at Mesa for an extended period of time before Swoop took over, and then their most recent strength coach. So they kind of got filtered stuff through him, and we were kind of doing that also on top. And so over time, I started getting a decent idea of what a good day.
See, that's pretty rad. I mean,
like.
you were paying attention.
Yeah,
right? Like,
I loved it. I loved every bit of it.
I loved it too, but I just loved doing it. Like, I didn't pay attention like what we were doing. I just like, if it was on the board, that's what we did. And really any gains that because I didn't turn into a man until I was barely a man. Until I was a junior, right?
Yeah.
A junior is when I, hit 6'3", hit 200 pounds, started moving some weight on squat, and we were following bigger, faster, stronger. Also, 3 days Monday. So we were Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We would, bench, incline, do an auxiliary. So it was like and then like pull-ups or something like that. So it was like basic upper body, lower body. And we would, kind of very basic. We'd start, at 15s and then get to the 12s and the 10s and then the 6s.
It's very
and then we
linear
get into the pyramids.
periodization.
Yeah. And then, we'd hit maxes at the end of the summer, and then just kind of go in and then kind of maintenance lift from there. But it was at least a program.
Oh no, and it works too. I mean, for high school athletes, just having that structure, I think, it's huge. As opposed to walking into a gym and like, oh, my chest isn't sore, I'm going to hit chest. You have this, and you should be going up this amount of weight because we're going down this amount of reps.
Follow the prescription. When did you integrate nutrition, right? Because that was all, sounds like you got a little bit of the same dialogue as me. Coach Ragsdale ends up being my head coach my junior and my senior year. He'd sit me down a chocolate milk and a Otis Spunkmeyer chocolate chip muffin every day. Eat, son, eat, and told us to, drink a Slim Fast with dinner. And, this is 2002 that I start drinking Muscle Blast, which I'd buy from Walgreens. It came in this coffee can. It was like contact cement, tasted awful, and you farted for 30 years after. Like I still got farts from that. The supplement game was a lot different at that time too. So when do you integrate nutrition into this, lifting protocol you're developing yourself at a younger age?
So super lucky, man, that, my mom was really into it. And in terms of, we would always sit down, and it didn't matter if we're having hamburger helper or we're having ribeye steaks. You're sitting down as a family and you're eating. And it was just, kind of ingrained into me at an early age that you needed to eat well in order to fuel your body.
So mom's cooking good or dad's cooking good.
Yeah, always, man. And, I think I really, really started pushing it after my ACL my sophomore year. Had kind of one of those come to Jesus moments where it's like, it's time to get real about this. Like, if you want to, go play college ball, you're going to have to outwork everyone in the room and everyone in the conference and everyone in the state, kind of, same guideline as you, where it's like, I felt like, I had, the baseline talent, but it wasn't like I went out there and did things every day that made people go, wow. So I knew I had to, attack it from all other ends.
This will not be quick. This will involve a lot of suffering.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Yep. Put your nose to the grindstone and put the blinders on and focus on the task at hand that day and keep chugging along. And so my sophomore year, and I was struggling to gain weight. And looking back on it now, I was just overworking. And, I was lifting 7 days a week in season. Even when we had practices and stuff like that, I'd always try to go and get, at least, 45 minutes in after practice and walk in the door like a zombie, eat everything that I possibly could, and then go to bed. But, I really, really started paying attention to it. Yeah, that year after I blew my knee out, that my junior year is when it was like, okay, started taking creatine. Started actually, taking protein supplementation, just looking up guidelines online too. And, there's so many different organizations that'll have different, standards of what you should have and stuff like that. So there's a lot of
fitness and supplement. Like you can join whatever religion you want.
Yep.
But did you end up getting into some of the solid stuff, the pound per body weight, or, like what was like the good stuff that you encountered early?
Yeah. So, I wouldn't say I was, like counting macros and checking micros and stuff like that, but I was taking a multivitamin, I was taking fish oil, I was taking creatine, I was taking whey protein. And early on, it still was not that good. I remember when Muscle Milk initially came out, and they had like cookies and cream. It was like, where did this come from? Like, I'm not gagging every time I'm taking anything down.
What angel brought us this? That was my I got a present. I got a jug of Mocha Joe Muscle Milk for my senior year, because up until that, though, I was all slim fast, and I was the stinky kid eating boiled eggs and cans of tuna, cooking. I had a little George Foreman in my room at home where I would cook up fish sticks, and I just stunk, right? And so I was on like my mindset was all, food. But then I got that jug of Muscle Milk. I was like, well, one, this is delicious, way better than that Muscle Blast that I'm drinking. And then I started to buy into the supplementation and rode supplements all the way through. So you're a sophomore and you start getting into the supplementation, the good shakes.
And I started prioritizing more too, just because I feel like with nutrition in general, people just try to overcomplicate it so much. And it really just, for me at that point in time, just kind of hit me like, eat your damn veggies. And eat a ton of protein and get your carbohydrates. And, I didn't really know necessarily everything that I was doing to my body in terms of, what a carbohydrate is going to be doing for energy substrates. What's protein essentially going to be doing for, the recovery process, getting, complete proteins, complex versus, simple carb. Like, that was not a thing at that point in time. It was just, if we were eating, sesame chicken and rice and veggies, I'm going to eat, 4 or 5, chicken thighs. I'm going to try to have 2 big old spoonfuls of rice, and I'm going to try to eat, as much veggies as I could. But, and like I said, for me, I think I became a very, very big eater early on just because I was doing so much. And so, I was ripped to the bone when I was a junior and senior, especially in season. But then even in the off seasons, it was like, man, I could just never get above 200, and no matter what I did, I'd do 3 packets of ramen immediately after I lifted with 2 scoops of protein and be sick, and then an hour later we'd have dinner and then I'd be having like cookies and milk before bed.
So it sounds like you were really getting after it.
Like,
because I thought I ate, I got a tapeworm, and I would do, I'd eat a whole Little Caesars hot and ready and a bag of breadsticks and stuff like that. But it seems like you had a more sophisticated way of paying attention to what all that food actually was composed of, why you need it. And it sounded like you were really dedicated to this vision of playing some college ball. So when does that idea enter your mind? Is that a coach that says, hey, look, college? Did you have someone that you looked up to that went and played college? Like, where's that idea of playing college that you get so dedicated to that you're stuffing your face the way you are? When's that happen?
I just, sports in my family are huge, and we weren't pushed by our parents or anything like that to do it. It was, just kind of a way of life for us. We're, huge Oklahoma Sooner fans. My whole family, on my dad's side's from southeastern Oklahoma, so it was kind of like a second religion to us. And, Sooner games, it was the blinds were closed, the phone was unhooked, and we're sitting there locked in and watching it. So, it was a big deal, and it was, obviously you have, aspirations. Every kid does to, be on a big D1 level and everything like that. But it was, for me, as you get older, it was like, I just want to, continue playing ball. I just loved football, man.
Right.
Through and through, it was, brought me some.
Sound like you loved all of football.
Oh yeah.
Right. So a lot of people love playing in the games.
Yep.
A lot of people love the season, kind of. A lot of people might say they love practice, right? But it is a 365 sport, and that love at first lift, that's a huge deal in my observation around ultimately being successful in getting to the next level and contributing.
Oh no, for sure. It was, looking back on it, and I tell our guys this all the time. The only reason that I got the time on the field that I did was the stuff that I was doing, outside of it. And blessed that I had Gersick. One of your questions was, did I have Kern? I did not have Kern. Obara was here on my visit. But I had just met with Gersick. But right away, him and I hit it off, and I just picked at him all the time. What else can I be doing? And I was still kind of in that same mindset when I was a freshman here. If I wanted to be in here 5-6 days a week, and he's like, "Dude, get out! Like, you guys have ran for an hour, and you guys lifted for an hour and a half.
Go take a nap."
Yeah, exactly. So. But he was, he was a very integral part in my success. But I just knew, that, and like you said, it was a 365, 24/7 type thing with me. I needed to be smarter than the guys at my position, or the guys that they were bringing in. I needed to study more film.
You needed to control anything that you had
absolutely
influence over.
Yep.
So, what's your senior year look like for you as far as playing, as far as how does your team perform, and how does the recruiting process start going for you?
So we had a good senior year, a really good senior year for Moffat County. We'd been down in the past couple years, but like I said, the guys that were around me, I think we had it's like 8 or 9 guys that ended up being all conference.
Nice.
And there was only one of them that wasn't, lifting with us after school and stuff. Yeah. So I just had a good group of guys, man, that really liked to work and get after it and held each other accountable. And the cool thing, that I tell people about growing up in a small town is, like, 4 or 5 of those guys that were, a couple of the other ones were separate classes. But, I've been playing ball with those guys since I was 5-6 years old. Football, basketball, everything. And so extremely close. And there was nothing that couldn't be said. No one took things personal. There were fights that happened, and but we all knew at the end of the day that, we were there for each other. So that's good, solid, healthy confrontation between teammates, right? Where you're able to get on each other, hey, get your foot behind the line. You're dogging it. Push each other up against the lockers for this, that, and the other. Not necessarily for performance, but for process, based kind of activities, right? You're not going to class, dude. You're going to screw us. That's where I think the larger that circle can grow within a team, where you're holding each other accountable from a place of love and also from a place of credibility, because you're actually doing the damn thing too. Like that's a big deal, and that's where, I see this transition from the 07, 08, 9, kind of my era. It seems that group of really dedicated, staying here for the summer and lifting, like, that seems to start to grow. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Sorry, I got on a tangent. So who's the first, like, how old are you when you first start talking to colleges? Like, is Craig getting swarmed with scouts? Like, what's that like?
I think that a lot of scouts thought I was going to keep growing.
Yeah.
And so early on, it was end of my junior year, kind of in that off-season area. And I still don't even know what our dead periods are. Stuff changes all the time through CHASA. But I was, kind of talking with, believe it or not, NAU and UNC. And so, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, like, I might end up being, D1 AA. And it was all, just based on, well, we'll see how your senior year is going to be going and stuff like that. And had some interest from the RMAC. I was talking to Fort Lewis. I was talking to Western. I talked with Shattern a little bit. I talked to here a little bit. New Mexico Highlands.
Do you remember who you talked to here?
It was the guy that actually recruited me the heaviest here was George Hawley.
George Hawley.
So
Powerful.
Coach Hawley, man.
George Hawley Esquire, the
man.
The man. The legendary linebacker, wiriest, feistiest dude you could ever meet. So George is the one.
Yep. So Coach Hawley was the one that initially reached out to me, and it was him and Villasenor.
Okay.
So
yeah, Nesto was a beast.
Yep. And so that was. I remember coming on campus and looking at him and just thinking like, man, I don't know if I can even play at this level, because I mean his head was as wide as my shoulders. And
his
shoulders
wider than both those screens. He's a Coke machine with legs.
Yeah.
Right. Just a nasty nose guard.
Yep, that's what I heard. So yeah,
and we would do drills. He was my position coach for 2 years, and he'd be like, "Why can't you just do it like this?" And he just ragged all the piss out of you, and I was like, because I wasn't, for me to do that, coach, I need a time machine and different parents. Like that's what I need to be able to do that. He was a monster. So is George. George is an absolute technician and just such a great mind for the game.
Oh, brilliant.
So they're digging you, they're bringing you here. You come on a recruiting trip.
Yep. So I came on, and I didn't do an overnight or anything like that. We actually just came down for the day. I came in early. Came in, watched a little bit of a lifting session. They took us out to lunch.
What was that lifting session like?
So it was actually, at that time, they had it split up into groups, so it wasn't like it was packed or anything like that. I remember the weight room, Kern had it, it was still set up the way Kern had it.
Yeah.
So, the platforms were all over in the corner, and the racks were down the middle and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I remember walking over there and talking to Gersick, and I believe the guy that was in here was Ashak.
Yeah.
And so Ashak was in here working on the platforms. Yeah, and everyone that was in that era knows Ashak.
Powerful professional
freaky
football champion, professional football coach, Kevin Ashak.
Yeah.
But yeah, mutant.
Yeah, freaky. And some of the stuff in my career, watching him in the weight room, and especially, after he had like his ACL surgery, watching him just, like 225 strict overhead barbell press standing, and it's just like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like he was just, a different guy.
Yeah, for sure.
But so to get back to the recruiting a little bit, so I was initially, I was talking to some of those D1 AA schools, and NAU and UNC had both come out to Moffat County. I did, like a vert for them. We didn't run a 40 or anything like that. And at that time, I always said, I peaked early. So, I was moving really, really well. I was just a little bit light. But the first visit both of them took, the first thing they did, looked at the top of my head, looked at my feet, and I'm like, they think I'm short, And so it was just kind of one of those things like, well, I'll just see where, what shakes out my senior year. And then after my senior year, ended up being All-State and stuff like that.
Awesome. Congratulations.
And, had a great year. And the team, we ended up winning or losing 3 games that year. We got bumped out of the playoffs. We were the 16 seed, and I want to say it was Alamosa had won their conference and was like 6-5 or something like that, and it bumped us out. So we ended up not being able to make the playoffs. But it was the best year we had in 4 or 5 years.
That's exciting.
And then that's kind of when there was a lot of traction with the RMAC, and then I was also talking to a lot of like the D3s on the West Coast, Lewis and Clark, cool. Schools in that area. I talked to Luther. There was various smaller universities that I was talking with.
So what is the tipping point where you go, Adams State?
So it's funny, right? So we come down on our visit, and I'm sure a lot of kids have this. If you've been to Alamosa, you're not inner city. It's not a big city, by any means. And I'd grown up in something very, very similar.
Right.
And so, I'd gone to Mesa at this time. I'd gone to Mines at this time on my visits and stuff like that, and was looking for something different. And we came down here. Loved the coaching staff. I remember sitting in the coaching offices and just BSing with them for 5 or 6 hours. And so I hit it off with them right away. My parents really, really liked, the staff at the time. And we were on the way home. And I was like, I don't know if it's, right for me. We'll see. And my parents just kept telling me, we think, I think it's a good fit. We think it's a good fit. We think it's a good fit. So I make, the dumb mistake, high school kid, trying to play out all my cards.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't commit on,
signing day?
Yeah, on signing day. And so I remember my mom talking to me, and we were looking over some of the D3s. I was into education too. I'm a nerd. I mean, I'll be the first to admit it.
Because if Mines was talking to you, sounds like you might have been handling business in the classroom too.
Yeah.
And
I always took it pretty serious.
That is probably something that boded very well for you in the recruiting process.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
They're looking at me, a 6'3", 210-pound, maybe a something, right, with a 292, and I had basically gotten C's and D's when I was a freshman and sophomore, and then started taking it serious. Like, there were, the grades probably helped you.
Yeah, no, for sure they did. And coming from that area too. There wasn't. I don't think there was another kid out of the conference that year that went and played the next level that year. It was usually we'd have one or two kids every year from the Western Slope League that would go somewhere and usually fall off. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't highly recruited. We did a lot of reaching out. We were on NCSA. Doing phone interviews with various coaches. You'd put your clips up every single week and try to get out there, and coaches would call you. And that's, how I got in touch with a lot. But, I had myself, emailed, various schools in the RMAC. And then, off the ones, Fort Lewis, Mesa, Western, Mines, Adams, that's where, that traction kind of picked up. But, anyways, so I didn't sign on signing day. And I remember sitting down at dinner and talking with my mom, and she's like, it's the other schools you're looking at, they're $50,000, $60,000 a year, and we can't cover that. I grew up in a normal family. We're middle class, and
Son, let's be economical about this.
Yeah, so it's kind of be smart about the situation. And at that time, it was just kind of like in my head, living rent free, Adams State. It just. Something told me to. And so I remember calling Coach Villasenor that next day and saying, I want to be a Grizzly. And he said, it's great, but, yesterday was National Signing Day. The scholarships are gone. If you still want to come, you can be a preferred walk-on.
Okay.
And so I said, yeah, no, absolutely, let's do it,
Wow.
So that's, kind of how it all started.
That's interesting. I mean, because I'm sure you might have had maybe something else on the table to at least nothing. I'll go and I'd rather have something over nothing, but you sounds like you had some humble pie / made some long-term business decisions. You signed with the Grizz.
Yep. Yeah, no, and it was, I think, at that point in time, they were the first one that I called. It was where I wanted to go. And if it was a no, then it's like, okay, well, let's go down, the list of other teams in the RMAC probably. And when he told me that, I just figured immediately, like, okay, all the other teams are going to be saying the same thing.
Yeah.
This is the place I want to go. There's no point in, saying, I need to think about it. If this is where you want to go, burn your boat and, make that decision.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's where it all started.
So when do you come down? Do you report at camp in early August?
Yep.
What did you do? So, because I'm also very interested to know, based off of your experience and if it's changed anymore based off of the knowledge you've accumulated, what'd you do to prepare yourself? So to get myself ready, I'm, I think they had sent out a workout program. I was doing that workout program in my old high school gym.
Yep.
They let me do their speed camp and stuff. So what did you do to prepare yourself? And had they set anything up for you, like expectation-wise? Like, hey, we want you to put on 10 a lean, before you come out? What was that like?
So it was, they wanted me to put some size on initially. I think my senior weight on the roster was 215, but I was probably 205. And, so, they wanted me to put on a little bit of weight.
And just so at this time, you're a Marty Heaton special at that time, right? I mean, I think that's what Coach Heaton really likes as far as, hey, we're going to get a blue-collar kid, hard-nosed, hard worker. He's got some good tape. And that body type has done a lot for Adams State.
For sure. For sure. Kind of the tweeners. But at the time too, I was not sure. From my understanding, it was, I was going to be coming here to play defense, really.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Either way, I didn't care, man. I wanted to play college ball.
Were you signed as a linebacker?
Yeah.
And so Adams State School of Linebackers, baby.
So, I had reached out to Gersick. I was one of those. He probably hated me at the time.
Dude, you do so much smart stuff.
One of those kids, that's emailing at the time. I was like the classic kid where it's like, oh, he probably doesn't have a whole lot going on. In hindsight, 2020, working with 650
Don't take this
athletes.
the wrong way, but I mean, like a lot of the reason I was in the weight room all the time, I didn't have a lot of other cool stuff to do, and I could wrap my identity up in this thing.
Yep.
And I wasn't about goofing off the way some of my other peers, were goofing off. So don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I'd reached out to Gers, and he sent over a kind of player preparation packet, and there was no running in the spring, so it was just lifting, man, and it was 4 days a week. As we all know that I've had Gersick, the periodization was phenomenal. I put on 15 pounds that spring after basketball, got super, super strong. And then he sent out the summer packets, and that's when we started doing, more of our strength and conditioning. Started doing, more sprint work, plyometric work. And coming from a smaller school, we did stuff, but I'd never, been around stuff that structured.
Right.
So, I just blew up, and I think I ended up coming in and reporting at about 220. Ooh. And, so he had put some good size on me.
Were you doing it on the solo? Did you have a couple of the boys?
Yeah, shout out, man. My dude, Michael Samuelson. So he was a kid that actually played at Mesa.
Okay.
He was 2 years younger than me, but he was kind of on the same path, man. He loved working hard. His family had raised him that way. He loved lifting weights. And so he was a sophomore, going to be a junior, going into his junior year. And every day, man, that we had running, we'd take his lab out there, we'd take his dog out there and play a little fetch, and then it was like, all right, it's time to run. And so we would go out there, probably 10, 11 in the afternoon, and go run at the high school stadium. And then in the evenings, about 5 o'clock at night, we'd go in and we'd go lift together. And so he was there for every single one, man. We held each other accountable. We would eat meals together, all that. So, he was the ride or die in terms of a training partner early on.
That's the steel to sharpen yourself on. That's a huge component. My boy Jake Anderson, my best friend, he was my training partner. He would still train with me, but he was getting ready to go up to NAU, be an RA, get his prereqs done for med school, and so. We would work out together, but it wasn't the same way we were working out together, the summers before. So I just kind of had to be around it and still kind of, in Apache Junction, I was still kind of like a pace setter as far as do what you're told to do. That was a semi-new concept. Yeah. So powerful to have that lifting partner.
Oh, no, for sure. It made a huge difference, man. And he was a freak too. He was a kid that he's 2 years younger than me, and it's like, man, he's throwing around weight that's similar to mine. I got to get my shit together because, I can only imagine what guys at the collegiate level were doing. And so, it was always good for us, man. We pushed each other hard, and so I came in and I was in good shape. I passed the 300s, thank God. My butt cheeks were clinched for 30 minutes straight after.
As a tight so they put you in the 60s?
Yep, so I was a 60 group. We ran it on.
Did you run the 300 before you got here?
Oh, yeah. And so in Gersick's program, if I can remember correctly, in May we ended up running 1 or 2 every Friday after doing, it was, it was more of your anaerobic capacity type stuff, and then you were doing that as well at the end. It was your finisher for the week. And then in June it was 2 or 3, and then in July it was 3 or 4. And so, you get to the point where you're used to it, you get your pace down and everything like that. But then I remember, coming here, and we were on I believe it was the old soccer field.
Yep.
And the grass is 8 inches long, and it's coned off, and it looks like it's 35 yards.
The opposite of the water conservation project that we have going on now.
Yeah, exactly. It was a forest, man. And so I remember getting my first one done and leaning up against that fence, and I could just feel, just all the lactic acid.
All the
hydrogen accumulation was
so
just,
good,
and my cheeks were locked up. And I was like, all right, just get through it, man. It's one of those things you just had to do. But so, no, everything that Gersick could put me on prepared me, perfect for it. I came in and I felt great. So,
so what's that red shirt year like for you? How do you assimilate yourself in the dorms? Which dorms you stay in?
Coronado B Wing.
B Wing.
So I think it was the one that was last renovated. So it was, we were in the tougher dorms.
Yeah. It's a little rough.
Yeah.
A little rough, and that would have been the way that I would have experienced it too, with the brick walls and
the tile floors that used to be white, but they were yellow.
Yeah, the smoker yellow linoleum. What was it like for you making the transition to college, who were your fast friends when you got here?
So right away, Connor Stevens.
Yeah.
Immediately. I had a roommate that was on the team. He was a punter, actually, Bart Schleicher, and he was from BV. And so I met Big O through him.
Okay, yeah, Big O.
So me and Big O, kind of hit it off right away. But in terms of, someone that, kind of had the same mindset as me and took school serious and all that, Connor and I hit it off right away.
And are you guys both like true freshmen at the same time?
So no, he was actually a sophomore, but he was living in the dorm still.
Okay.
And then Mathiasen, as well, Derek Mathiasen was in the dorms too. So I got
shout out to the boys.
Yeah, heck yeah. So I got close with them, right away. And then another one would be Brent Lush. And so Connor and Lush were, it was our first day of fall camp. And I walked in, and I was on the first rack here when you walk in. And I remember him hitting there was 405 on the bar, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to try. I'm going to keep. So I walk up, hey, man, can I lift with you guys? And they both kind of smirked and if you can keep up, yeah, ride it,
all right,
go ahead.
All right, pup.
And so that was, us three kind of trained together through Lush's career.
There you go. Is that a common occurrence for you? I mean, walking in, who's the big dog? All right, let's go get in it.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think I want to surround myself, with the best people in the room. And so maybe it was just because it was the first rack. A-Shack could have been in the corner hitting 700 pounds, and I didn't see it. But, I walked in, and, they had 4 wheels on, and I'm like, all right, these
take it for a ride,
these
boys.
are kids that, I can get better with.
Right, I mess with this.
And they ended up being just muscle dummies. It was a perfect trio, man.
Yeah.
Lush was a junior. He was a
Gotta
sophomore.
love the brute squad, baby.
I was a freshman, and so I got to enjoy lifting with them, through fall camp, and then they kind of split us up, and so that year, red shirts had their separate times, and Gersick blew us up.
How big was your class that had come in?
Oh,
and what did it
I want to say between
mostly
50 and 60 kids,
Woo!
And so it was a big class, and we
and that's
ended
2011.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, fall 2011. So. It's 50, 60 kids. It was a pretty dang big group. Yeah. And we ended up having 5 or 6 my senior year that,
Nutrition's a son of a gun. So I talk with Levi Gallus now, D coordinator at Kearney. We all came in. They had the #1 defense in the nation in 2004. We were the recruiting class. We came in for the fall of 2005. So big class, 55 maybe, something like that. And we had 17 of us that maybe stuck it all the way through.
So still a little better, but
but he's like, that's not really a normal thing. It's usually, a higher rate of attrition where you do have 5 or 6 that survive that, that's a good word. Survive the, the transitions into college and all the other stuff that goes into it.
Yep.
So what about class wise, right? So you find the goon squad. Did you just go ahead and carve out your seat? I don't know if they were in the East Campus yet for HPPE. Were they still here in Plocky?
So, initially that first year, I'm trying to think. Yeah, that first year we had our CPR first aid class or whatever, it was HPPE 101 was in here. There was a couple classes that we had in here because they had not turned it into locker rooms yet. And so the majority of that was over here. And then I want to say I think it was my junior year we got transitioned over to East Campus. So.
Any question about what you were going to major in?
No, so I knew right away that I wanted to do something exercise science, kines, along that route.
I'm sure that they sold that to you good on if you're really interested in lifting, it's a good place.
Yep. And so
VO2 max.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so and it does. The program here is great.
Yeah.
But early on, I had this dream of, just kind of having my own facility and doing elite level athlete preparation.
Wow.
So that was, kind of where, I thought I was headed. But, then just, over the years talking with Gersick, I spent so much time behind this desk, as an undergraduate. I'm sure he just wanted me to get the hell out so he could get some work done. But, I'd come back here on lunch and sit here and eat my lunch with him and just talk about random stuff we, learn in class and a lot of periodization.
That's a pretty rad
stuff.
Mentor. Right?
Oh, it's awesome.
I've been around
awesome,
the periphery of Gersick. I haven't spent a lot of, close time because we were, I think he's a year older than me. So my first experience in the Adams State weight room, Gersick and his brother yoked They're lifting in there. And then there's Opalani Vaipulu, who's a 290-pound defensive end. Nesto's in there. A guy named Leonard Simagist, who's 270 pounds with muscles on his teeth, from a Canadian cat. And Jason Seymour and Adam Warren. I go and look in the weight room, and then, Adam Warren's pressing 315 for 12, and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, what position is that guy? And he's 29, right? He's got a mustache and he's bald, right? And I go, what position does that guy play? He's like, oh yeah, that's a defensive end. I was like, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? But I got to be around Gersick and watch him, watch his work ethic, watch the variation that he was bringing into the weight room with the guys that he was working with. He was working with Derek Woodski. He got to work with a lot of pretty rad people, and just a strong mofo. So he must have been a rad mentor for you.
Yeah, no, he super patient with me. Mm-hmm. I'm sure when I was a freshman, sophomore, I was asking some dumb questions.
Oh, I'm sure.
And he's sitting here rolling his eyes, but he always took the time, man, to give me the time. It was every time I came in here, I felt like I was learning something. It was a very, very integral part of me becoming a strength and conditioning coach, because, like I said, at first it was like, I want to go out to, California or Florida or be in Texas and somehow find a way to get a business loan. Or work my way up, in a place that does combine prep type stuff. And then, try to branch out. But then, after kind of seeing everything he had done for us, you get the opportunity, instead of changing, 5 or 6 guys' lives with, maybe making it to a pro level. You're working with 150 athletes a year for football.
You get to make a real big difference with. And you've made some of those, and I've gotten some anecdotal, I've just gotten some stories from you and Friday and stuff like that. But so tell me about your seasons, memorable players. I believe you're a part of the 8-3 season?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was my first year actually playing. So that was my redshirt freshman year.
What was it like watching them guys get after
Insane. It was like
dogs.
Yeah. At that time, it was like, man, I'm happy I'm on offense because I get to watch our defense. I can't remember where we were ranked that year and the year after, but it was, and even on my redshirt year, we had to be top 5 every single
Salty
year.
Bunch. Yeah.
And so, it was just awesome kind of watching them operate. And even my redshirt year, man, when we had guys, I look back.
You get to spend time with that defense then, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because you're running scout team.
Yep.
Scout teams is one of my favorite experiences. So what was that scout team?
I loved it, man. I really did. We had Coach T. Tutu Mariner was our scout coach at the time. And it was fun for me, man. They had, it was kind of this same thing. I really liked it because it reminded me of high school, where it's like, okay, we're playing Kearney. They kind of have, this offset tight end / fullback. That's what you're going to play this week.
Yeah.
We're playing Mines. They got a bigger wide receiver. That's what you're going to be playing. Because I was still in that tweener stage. I was about 220. Could still move pretty decent. And so I got to, play all over on offense. But, just thinking about that team, you got guys, Fabrice Nolan. You got
Buckets
Rocco.
Breezy, baby.
You got Rocco. You got Connor Stevens. You got Brent Lush. You got James Ackle. You got Jake Long. You got, the line was.
It's a big DN. What was his name? Cody Brown?
Cody Brown. Yep. So, it was, I think a lot of that prepared me to actually play, that next year at that level.
Oh, for sure.
Because it was, one of those things where it was like, I remember that, the first game I'd played my redshirt freshman year, and I was, at the time, kind of flipping time with Brandon Murray. And
B. Murray.
So he starts for that first game, and I remember kind of going in just thinking like, man, this is way easier than what I had to deal with.
Oh, yeah.
Compared to
people
Coach
coming
Heaton's
at you from 50 different angles and stuff like that.
And I always tell our guys here, too, it was a huge, huge learning opportunity for me, because I was a guy that took pride in watching a ton of film, and by Wednesday or Thursday, Tuesday or Wednesday, really, if I felt like I didn't have their defense down, I was a little bit worried. But with Coach Heaton, it was like every single fall camp, I'm here in Whiting, I'm like, okay, they're in some kind of variation, man, but how are they gonna flip flop pre-snap? Connor Stevens would be out there yelling 5, 6, 7 different things before the ball gets snapped. And it's like, well, the defense that I saw in front of me is not what's happening once the ball is snapped. So, huge learning opportunity. But, redshirt year was great, man.
Redshirt year, great time to play. Like, play in the sense of like you're responsible, you're going to do a good job as a scout team, or you're going to give them the look that they need you to give them, but you also can do stuff without getting chewed out too hard as far as like messing around with spin moves and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, it was I think too just a great opportunity. Like I'd kind of said, just playing against better athletes.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. I mean, those were the guys that prepared me
Mm-hmm.
to actually be able to, handle stuff my redshirt freshman, my sophomore, junior,
Mm-hmm.
and senior year. Overall, it was one of my favorite years, honestly, of playing ball too. And I'm a muscle dummy.
Mm-hmm.
I nerd out with all the periodization stuff and nutrition and all that too. But I love that we were still, coming in here and lifting hard,
Mm-hmm.
and still had that side, of athletics during the season. Where in season you're probably lifting twice a week, maybe doing a recovery day,
right. Mm-hmm.
but we're getting after it 4 days a week still.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had Scout Bowl too. And
Scout Bowl was
awesome.
the best.
Yep. So Scout Bowl was Thursdays, right? So
Mm-hmm.
on Thursdays. We'd get together and they'd have it just kind of randomly split up,
Mm-hmm.
and so you'd get to go out and kind of knock
Yeah.
heads with the guys that you're competing with.
Yeah, yeah, for
you
sure.
they're guys that are in your class or maybe one class ahead of you, but they're the guys that you're trying to outlift every single day.
Mm-hmm.
They're the guys that you're competing with.
You got the
for
older
future
guys on the
spots.
sideline,
Yes.
right? You make
Yeah.
a play or something like that. Woo, that's what we're doing.
Yep.
That's it.
You finally got to play some full contact
Yeah.
football where it wasn't like, and even being tight end, like you can't chop block when you're going up against Fabrice Nolan.
Right.
Like, you do that, your ass is getting ripped.
You have a
and
problem.
Yeah. And so, but then you go out in Scout Bowl and it's like, I can just go play. Like,
Right.
I can finally, just go play football.
Uh-huh.
And so, that was one of my favorite things, about that redshirt year.
So you transition, so you're splitting some time with B. Murray, powerful Brandon Murray, and then what's the rest of your career? How does it develop? What's it look like?
So, we'd kind of talked on it a little bit earlier, but I just, kind of burnt my boat. Fully committed to, listening to whatever my position coach was saying, OC was saying, Coach Heaton was saying.
Who was your position coach at that time?
So at that time we had Sersha.
Okay.
So Phil Sersha, and he was one of my absolute favorite coaches at any level in any sport.
Uh-huh.
Just, an awesome guy. Took care of us, and he coached his ass off for us. He really did get us fundamentally sound and get us prepared. Was thorough in film, game prep, all
and
that.
who was OC when you came in? Was it still Wassinger?
So yeah, Wassinger initially, and then we had Justin Holland after that.
Justin Hall. He was the CSU quarterback kid?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Uh-huh.
And so, so that, having them just, I stayed here all summer long.
Yeah.
I'd go home for 1 or 2 weeks tops.
Right.
And
Did
then
you do that all of your years?
Yep.
Attaboy. That's a good
So
move.
the only year I didn't was the year I was actually just coming in as a freshman. But every year after that, it was, go home for a week or two, and then it's time to get back to work.
Mm-hmm.
And, even, me loving the gym and, I've always been into this. You'd go home and you'd have some good lifts and you think you're doing, what you need to do. And then the moment you get back, you realize it's just a totally different atmosphere.
This is different.
Yeah, it's totally different. Guys are throwing around heavier weight.
Mm-hmm.
The energy's different. The weight room's different. I always joke that you walk into this weight room, you're automatically going to go up and max is 20 to 30
The
pounds.
power plant.
There's something about it, man.
The power
there's something
plant
special
moniker
about,
is exact. You cannot match the environment and just the overall human spirit where, you guys wanted like, hey, you got this. Lightweight, baby.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, doing that, I think had a huge effect on my playing time.
What was the group looking like at that time?
So it was smaller. We had a lot of guys in, and it was starters were here, plain and simple.
Yeah.
I mean, you might have a trickle in May,
right.
but the majority of the guys all had the same plan. We're going home for about 10 days.
Right.
And Gerst would tell us, just go relax for a week.
Right.
You guys have been working your tails off. You guys have your morning runs. You guys have, spring ball, all
Right.
that stuff. You just get done with finals. You've been lifting hard. Just go take a week, to kind of, decompress, hit the reset button and then come back and be ready to
Which
work.
is definitely enough. I mean, like I had the FOMO, my first 2 years, so I went home for the summer. And I got after it, but ain't the same
It's
as...
just not the same.
Yeah, because it's my junior year, Marty comes back, and along with Marty, and now we had like our programming, I don't think was very good. I don't mean to be critical, but no designated strength and conditioning coach. My freshman year, the programming was, I want to say it was all 12s or something like that on Mondays. So that was bench, incline, squat, cleans, and shoulder press. And then you do the same lifts, 6s on Wednesday, and then you would do a pyramid on Fridays, right?
Daily undulations.
If you say so, right?
Not a lot of variation.
Well, then and there definitely wasn't anybody explaining to us, what was going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And then when we had some exposure, Coach Pasquale was there at the time. He would just thrash our cores. We're doing 20 minutes of all the abs, and I think that was useful. But my first exposure, maybe to like real good strength and conditioning, was Derek Woodsky. I don't know if you're familiar with Derek Woodsky.
So I've not been lucky enough to meet him in person. It's someone I do want to at some point in time cross path with for sure, because I know he was a big mentor for Gersick.
Yeah.
But I mean, even the stuff that Woodsky shared with Gersick has shared with me, and the guy is brilliant. I mean,
super legit. I believe he's in the United Arab Emirates, like working for some princes or something like that as their
I know
personal trainer.
For a period of time, he was doing that kind of stuff, and more recently he's got, I follow him for sure on because he's brilliant, man. It's a guy that you're like, you see him doing something crazy, and it's like, why is he doing this? And then he's pretty good at being open about with his programming and what's going on. Why
it was his set pattern that was the first time I pressed over. It was the first time I benched over 300 pounds because he had us in this contract. I think you'd call it a contract. You do a heavy set of 2, then a set of 8, and then you do a heavy single, and then a set of 6. Yep. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Yep. But
it's probably
I pressed
doing like
1-6,
1-6, 1-6.
Yeah,
it works, man. It gets you strong
for sure. And so that was very interesting. We had a gentleman named Coach Wilson, who was the assistant D coordinator, maybe the secondary coach for a little bit, and he put us through. Heaton was trying to burn the field to get all the snakes out when we came back. So we did these 4-quarter drills where everyone's, they're in a plank, and then, okay, ice skaters, it was just, really did a good job of breaking us down, but a lot of us got jacked off of that. And, but then they bring in Ben Kern, right? And Ben Kern, to my understanding, is the first dedicated strength and conditioning coach. And I think he was I think he was above his time. We were doing a lot of the CrossFit type stuff. We were overhead squatting. He put a rubber band on the rack. He's like, okay, this is where your butt has to hit for it to count as a squat. We're like, what?
Yep.
What? What do you mean we can't do quarter squats anymore, right? Yep. And so he was, athletic lifts, full range of motion, getting us in reverse bench, doing a bunch of stuff that was definitely new to us, and I don't think it was as well received as maybe as it could have been. And he was a new strength coach, so I'm sure he was learning too. But that was our first exposure to a legitimate strength and conditioning coach. I'm sure that he's the one who parted out all this stuff and made the big purchases when Larry was renovating the place.
Yep.
So I don't know, why'd I go on that tangent?
First exposure. I'm trying to think where it started too.
I guess it's not. Oh, okay. So here's my point: was we got to spend. There was maybe a dozen of us my junior year here during the summer.
Oh yeah, yep.
Grilling, getting after it. He had some wicked sprint sequences for us, and made But I look back on it, like he was building our aerobic base. Like he was doing a lot of really, really smart stuff that I didn't understand was smart stuff at the time. But that next year, that group grew a little bit, and by, and we had been, soliciting, Rocco, James Ackle, stay here. And in the podcast with Rocco says, like, hey, that's one of the things I wish I would have done different was stay here during the summer. So figure it out, sleep on couches, stay here and train during the summer. It's not the same at home. You're not missing out on anything. Go home for a week, come back and get after it.
Yep, no, for sure. And it's, I think to kind of get back to the root of the question too, the rest of the experience, at that time was, and our guys, I want to say 2012, 13, 14, we probably averaged 20 to 30 in June and 30 to 40 in July. Last week of July, you better be here if you're a returning guy type thing. And And, for those guys, it was a rude awakening because the ones that have been here, we've been on this, accumulation of volume with Gersick. And, if you hadn't done anything, you're coming in, you're probably going to have DOMs for 5 or 6 days,
It's an issue.
Yeah. And so it's a huge part of success, in any program at the collegiate level for football. D2, we can't scholarship summer, and so you can't make it mandatory. But I know one of the things that you were going to ask, is about the summer buy-in recently. And I remember when I first started coaching, there wasn't a big push for it. I really tried to get a push for it, but it was one of those things where the staff in general just kind of thought they're college athletes, they can hold themselves accountable, and they're gonna do what they need to do. But slowly over time, because I've been the head for football for going on my 7th year. And so I was super lucky in my transition, right when I got done and I'm starting my master's program. Gersick trusted me. So I've been programming for him, all of it. He's been hands off on everything, except for, input, which is always knowledgeable input, here and there along the way. But slowly over time, we got to where it's like, okay, now we're at 30 in June. Now we're at 40 in June. Now we're at 50 in June. And so, this year it was, right around 50 guys, like June 6th, I think, is when we asked them, if they would come back for, an official report date, and there was a ton of guys that had transferred in that were already here. And by July 1st, there's 75 guys out on the field. And I'm thinking, this is amazing.
Yeah.
For a Division II
I saw a lot of big guys.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, these are clearly all O-linemen doing O-lineman stuff that looked pretty darn structured, organized and effective, right? Because I did plenty of goofing around where it's like, oh yeah, this is work, but you only run the hoops so many times. Yeah.
And so this last summer was phenomenal in terms of the amount of bodies that we had out there this summer.
Very encouraging.
Very much so. And it shows in. We're so close, and everyone that's avid with this and all the alumni, they're following it.
Yeah.
And there's 3 or 4 games where it's 3-point games and
big time.
And so you're right there. You're right there. But physically, it's just the best we've been in a very, very long time.
That's great.
When you're running guys on 2-300s the beginning of July, and guys on on a legitimate 25-yard are burning it by 7-8 seconds, you're like, this is where we need to be. We need to be ahead of the curve, and so it's huge too. I think where a lot of guys don't realize how big it is in the little details, your mechanics.
Yep.
And you'll see memes on Instagram or any kind of blog, stuff like that, and it's just classic stuff like you don't do anything all summer and then you show up to fall camp and you expect your body to be ready, and it's like that equals injury and no playing time. And so I think what we saw this year, very, very minimal injuries. And it's a huge part. It's not necessarily me programming. It's the guys coming and just preparing their bodies.
Preventable injuries.
Yeah, and the quad strains and the hamstrings and pulled, arch of the foot and just, little things, patellar quad tendonitis. We had a lot of guys in the past that had dealt with that stuff.
Right.
But then with this large group coming in, doing what they needed to do, they get into fall camp and it's like, we've been doing this. We've been running, that we'd have them come in and I run them first. 7 a.m. they're coming in and we'll do a long activation, kind of like you would do for a track and field athlete. And then Monday sprints, Tuesdays plows, Thursdays change of direction, Fridays more of your repeated bouts of sprinting, and then you have some kind of pretty much physical fitness type test.
Let's talk about how you got to this level of sophistication here, right? So you've had your experience as an athlete, putting in the work in the summers, hammering those eggs, doing the things that you need to do. Tell me about wrapping up, graduating, pretty high GPA.
What was that?
What was your GPA when you graduated?
Oh, I don't know. I think I was like 3.8, somewhere around there.
Super. I'm sure you got the New Hampshire Honor Society Award signed by Archie Manning and stuff. Congratulations on that. What was it like when you were done? Because you've been in the periphery, but like, tell me a little bit about that transition. Because I was at an existential crisis. Like, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go be a professional. I can't be going to the bars with the boys anymore, right? It's not my team anymore. I'm gonna look like a loser. Like, so tell me about that transition. For you.
So kind of interesting. I was still set on going and being a trainer somewhere, and my brother lives out in LA, and so I'm like, I'm gonna go sleep on his couch for 2 or 3 months to try to find a way to make it. And funny enough, in between that time frame, so I graduated like December 15th, and I was like, I need to find a way to make some money. I knew my parents, you're an adult, right? It's time for you to support your damn self.
Fly, baby bird.
Yeah. And so I had just went over to the Anytime Fitness here, and went in and asked if they're hiring, and I ended up sitting down and having a conversation about this long with the manager at the time. And
let's talk, Eddie.
Yeah, so Eddie Valdez. And so we'd sat there and kind of just BS.
How long had that been up and running at that point?
Oh man, I don't know. Probably 3 years, 3, 4 years, something like that. And he hired me on the spot. I got super lucky. We hit it off right away. Started doing personal training. Started kind of building that business. Yeah. Kind of moved into an assistant manager position, and then Eddie was off one day at lunch, and he probably doesn't even know this, so it'll be news to him, but Rosenbaugh was the head coach at the time, and I get a phone call, what's up, Rose? And when are you taking lunch? And I was like, I don't take lunch, I need to make money, doing PT, that's when they come in. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to be over there in about a half hour. I'm like, all right. Eddie had left for lunch, and Rose came in. He's like, let's go sit in the office. We need to talk. And, told me that, he's been wanting someone to do strictly with football. And he said, I think you're the guy. I was sitting there last night thinking about it and, thinking about your work ethic and, whatever. And, we want you to be the guy. And so at that point in time.
How does he know who you are?
Rose?
Because he's your – okay.
It was my senior year.
Okay, I got you.
So he came in the spring going into my senior year, and then I played my senior year for Coach Rosenbaugh. Okay. And so, he told me, he wanted me to be the guy. He's a businessman. We're going to figure out your master's program, all that stuff. Right. You don't got to worry about it, but you need to, this is what you need to do. Yeah. Pretty much what he told me.
He quarterbacked you up.
Yeah, and so that night I get a call from Gersick, and he's like, I heard you already talked to Rosenbaugh. And, my biggest thing was, are we working side by side? What are we going to be doing? What do I need to do to make things better in here? And it was kind of, you got to follow Title IX. You're going to work with probably softball or women's basketball or something along those lines, right? And but you're going to be primarily focusing on football. So I'm like, all right, I'm in. I'm in right away. And so I, end up kind of accepting, taking over.
And how long had you been a civilian at that point?
So that was in March. And so, it only been a couple months.
So it was pretty quick.
Yeah, and like you said, it was kind of, like one of those things you go home and, all I could think about was, man, the guys are lifting right now. Yeah. Man, it's Wednesday night. I should be going to bed because we got morning runs at 5:30 in the morning. So, you've just lived it for, it's been your entire life. Oh, yeah.
Especially when you pour into it.
Yep. And so, I missed it, but I didn't realize how much I missed it, at the time. And then Rose is like, oh, it's great. You can start in August. And I, essentially, in a less professional way, told him, screw that. Yeah. I'm starting in May.
See you tomorrow.
I'm starting.
When do you take lunch?
So I'm starting in May is what I told him. And so I started doing the summer programming and stuff like that summer. And I was lucky because, there were still 15, 16 seniors on the team. And it wasn't we played with you, we're not going to listen. It was we know how you were, and we will do anything you tell us to. I didn't have to really deal with, the issue of getting buy-in from kids right away and stuff like that.
Because you were a dog, right?
I just like to work, man.
Yeah. Because it's one thing, and it's like, it's not, Brady's our strength and conditioning. It's like, bro, hell yeah. Brady's are, that's rad.
Yeah, so no, it was, I was extremely blessed in that whole transition. But yeah, our first session, I remember, in Cam DeChester, one of my boys was squatting on the far rack by the mirrors, and I'm sitting there, yelling at dudes, and I'm sitting there queuing up, one of my best friends, and he's just taking every single cue. You can tell he's just locked in. And in that moment, it was like, this is what I want to do. This is actually the career that I want, And so, man. Yeah, it was, things happen in weird ways and stuff.
Because I wanted to have I wanted to have a long discussion with you of it was very interesting for me because when I built the CrossFit gym, because I wanted the group of people touching the steel, right? Like I was basically just filling my own need somewhere else, right?
Find a community of people that have this common interest.
But I also had a real strong idea about what strength and conditioning was, not from a programmatic standpoint, but from a culture and overall thematic. So I had to make some adjustments working with general population folks.
For
right?
sure. It's completely different.
It for sure. So it sounds like you had a pretty natural transition from student athlete to strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, and it was, I still at that time, was working at the gym, assistant manager, just trying to find a, make a way to get in the chair I'm in right now.
Oh,
and
that's for sure.
I mean, that was, kind of the dream, which,
biding your time.
Yep, and so,
because it would have been real easy, I'm sure, maybe you even had these times, but, it would have been real easy for you to cash the chips in. They don't value, if I'm not full, and you start trying to, people get bitter and resentful in those positions.
For sure. And
they don't stick with it long enough to where skill meets opportunity and you're ready to take it over, and you were that guy, you're boom.
Yep. So, I was extremely lucky. Just had to, find a way to keep your head above water.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a lesson, too, to, all the guys that come here. Is it's, and it goes back to redshirting and all that other stuff. Like the things that, are really going to be worth having, a lot of times you're going to have to stick it out.
Yeah.
And, there are people that come along things and are lucky and,
right.
Whatever you want to say.
Yeah. Extra
and even
blessed.
with the lucky people, a lot of times there's a lot of work going on, behind the scenes that you don't see.
Right.
But,
how much weight had you lifted up until that point that gave you the street cred to be able to, come in to where it's like there was no question that this is the guy for the job.
Yeah.
All that stuff and behind the scenes, it just doesn't get the appreciation.
Yep.
And the only one that loves it is you because you're the one who's doing it.
For sure. Yeah.
And you probably got called a goofball the whole time or oftentimes.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a fascinating thing. Oh, you're going to, I remember doing, crunches on my bedroom floor, and then, a guy walks in that was staying with us for a couple of weeks. Like, what are you doing? We already worked out. I'm like, that's what I got to do, guy.
Yep.
I don't know what to tell you. You're stupid, So what was that like taking over the program? It sounds like you had this experience with Gersik. You had the mentor to lean on. Did you make any adjustments? Like, what was it like taking it over? Did you need to watch it from the coach's lens for a little while, running what had been run before you started making your own tweaks? Tell me about that transition.
So it's a great question, man. Early on, I definitely, fell back onto a lot of his programming scheme, which I still, him and I are very, very similar.
Yeah.
And a lot of things when it comes to periodization and stuff like that. But, really sitting down, and, it's what's crazy about it, too, and I always, think about this, if there's one thing that I wish would have been a little bit different, it's that I would have been an actual GA that sat in the desk and lived in the dorms and whatever. But I was, working 12 hours a day over at Anytime Fitness and then
hustling.
Yeah. And so, I'd have my morning sessions here, which were, usually 6 a.m. to 7 with football, maybe 7 a.m. to 8 with football. If we were broke them up into two groups, and then, on the Tuesdays and Thursdays or whatever it may be, I was working with baseball and softball, and it would rotate. I got to work with wrestling, I got to work with golf, I got to work with lacrosse. So I got to work with a lot of the teams in those 2 years, but I was always jealous of the guy. And, it's funny, the ones that were here, were like a thrower that we were, we could rely on. We knew he would sit here and make things safe, but he never wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach, right?
Right.
But it was a perfect GA for someone that's like, okay, I need to go, have a meeting, and he's going to be consistent, and he's not going to let anything happen.
Yeah.
Where I wish I could have, flipped that. I would throw all that money away immediately for 2 years of sitting here next to Gersik and just being able to, get on tangents of nutrition, periodization, all that other stuff, right? So, for him and I, relationship outside of strength and conditioning, it just grew, more and more every single year. He's one of my dudes. I mean, friend for life for sure, and biggest mentor that I've had, in this career. But early on, it was, and that was his rule, and I was going to follow it. Everything that I wrote up, he had to clear first, which you should do that anyways.
That's how physician assistants
Yeah.
and doctors operate.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's it. It's the correct way of doing things. And so, there'd be times where I'd send them something and I've worked on it for 8 or 9 hours. I couldn't whip out programs, in a shorter period of time like I can now after doing it for so long. But, you'd spend a whole day or, even you're spending a week and just, an hour a day here reading on the side, trying to implement different stuff. And then you'd get back, why this, why this, why this. You could do this instead and get this, the same results from one movement that you're trying to get from 3.
Too risky. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Risk for reward type stuff.
Yeah.
And, there's a very big learning curve in you can sit, at a desk and write out the most perfect program with great periodization. You could write out a full mesocycle and have this perfect plan. But now all of a sudden, say you have softball and baseball and they're in there at the same time. Now they're all using the same equipment. There's not enough equipment. There's no flow to the weight room. And so there's all this, crazy stuff.
Right.
You might have where outside of the weight room, they're doing a ton of physical activity. And it's like, okay, it's time to rewrite the plan. We need to do an unplanned deload, maybe even an entire unloading month with them, stuff like that. So
you got the plan on paper.
Yeah, and it never usually sticks.
Your eyeballs tell you something else when you see technique breaking down, or you get some new information about, what the other activities are and the other demands, and then you go, oh, I did write that for 9 hours, but now we're gonna make the adjustments. And really, I mean, on paper, you could technically program a whole human to be super peaked and da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yep.
But that's where the discerning element of the human, of the coach, of this person who's experienced, that's where it's valuable, right? They got an IBM Watson thing that analyzes all of the cancer research, right? You want to take its top 5 suggestions and explore those.
Yep.
But you still need the discerning human to make a call that morning, whatever it is, to make the adjustments.
Yep. And so, I think that I've grown in that aspect, every year, just, being around more and more athletes and being put in unfamiliar situations now have become, familiar.
Yeah.
When, you have a group of athletes walking in, they're dragging feet, they got bags under their eyes.
Yeah.
And it might be Monday morning and they're college kids and it's like, they didn't behave this weekend.
Right.
And so, I can either,
behavior was not ideal
Yeah.
before preparing themselves for this training stimulus.
Yep. And so what can we do optimally? And that's, and that's, what Gersey taught me. Yeah, it's extremely easy to train someone maximally, but, getting them to be optimally trained for that time of year, whenever their competition, if you're a multi-peak athlete, whatever, getting on a tangent, but.
Yeah, no.
So, those few years, capacity was that of a GA. I mean, I was extremely lucky that I kind of got more of the experience in terms of writing programs, and I was running, there was no other GA in here. So I was running the room from day one, you know, and then, Gers would usually roll in here mid-morning, and then that's when I would go over to Anytime Fitness. So there was a lot of communication of, how did the morning go? What are the issues going on? When you program, you need to think about this. So, he was extremely helpful in all those areas. But yeah, over those years, like I said, I was extremely lucky too that I got to work with different populations. I think too,
just being exposed to them, right?
Yeah.
It's such a big deal. I mean, not only just the different population as far as the demand of sport, but then you're working, especially on a football team. How many different body types are you working with, right? You know, and the demands of the position. You got a Tommy Porter and an AJ Webb. You got 5'10" and 6'3". You got some gangly, awkward goon, and then you got some little compact ball of muscle that are playing the same position, have the same program and the same tasks to do, but it ain't the same.
No.
And you got to coach and cue, and you got to make all those different adjustments.
Yep, and I think, too, something to hit on, because, a lot of people will look down on it, and it's there's really, really good PTs, and there's really, really bad PTs, and there's, the in-between. And it comes with strength and conditioning. It comes with coaches in general. There's going to be people who pour everything into it, just like athletics. And there's going to be people who, think they're doing the right thing, but they really don't, look in the mirror and make adjustments and try to find, a better, more efficient way of getting to
lack
the same.
of self-awareness /
And so
the ego says, no, this is what we have to do.
Yeah. And so, I always told myself too, and Gers and I talk about it all the time, is, getting outside of your programming box. And I was lucky that I kind of, had guinea pigs. And, so thanks to all the PT clients that I had, because, it'd be like, all right, I'm going to, run this 3-month phase on, this, I had a couple girls that were, just graduating college and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm going to run through 3 months of this, and I'm going to body fat test them. I'm going to vert them. I'm going to max them. And then I'm going to see, what, did we get more explosive? Are we packing on muscle? Are we just getting maximal strength out of this program? What's happening? And, but, and then you also get, the population that's older that might have joint issues, has back issues, has MS, I mean, we've had, I've had so many different diagnoses that, I really had to learn how to program around things. And all that program practice, I think, had a huge help to me in terms of,
well, I'm sure you developed a lot, in particular in the whole skill set of empathy, right? Because I think it could be really easy to assume that you're just been the muscle goon and but that's not the case, because you've had to go through, you've told me a litany of injuries that you had to work through and recover from. And I'm sure that there's a big part in your heart where you're like, I really don't want that to happen to other people.
For sure.
Right. But you also had your own, your own kind of existential health scare that I bet you maybe had you thinking that you might not ever be able to touch the steel again. Do you mind telling us?
For sure. So I can't remember the year specifically.
Well, and set the table for us, right? Because you're hustling, you're programming for the football team, you're getting after it, and you're also you've been touching the steel. It seems the same way since you quit. Is that an accurate statement?
Oh yeah,
because I've ebbed and flow out of it, and I've done probably I've ebbed and flowed out of it. You've been consistently fit, strong, lean, big. Go.
Yeah. So, it was probably, I graduated in 15, so 17 or 18. I'll kind of get into what happened and then get into like what happened before.
Okay.
And so I'm driving home to Craig. And I'm going to see my family for Christmas, and it's kind of like, this time of night, it's, it's starting to get kind of hard to see. But I notice, I'm like, man, I really am like having trouble seeing the road, what's going on. My grandma has eye issues. My dad's starting to get them. I'm like, there's no way my eyes are going. I've had good eyes my whole life. Something's going on.
Right.
One of my buddies, lifelong friends, hit me up. Hey, man, Matt Linscomb, my quarterback, I haven't seen him in 3 years. Is having to get together. We're going to go celebrate Christmas over at their place. You want to go? Sure, why not? So I get home, have dinner with my parents, go out and see all my buddies from high school, and there's, a large group having a great time. And I wake up the next day, walk up the stairs, my mom looks at me and she goes, "What's going on with your face?" And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
Very funny, Mom.
What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so I go look in the mirror, and I, complete Bell's palsy on my right side. So zero movement at all. And I was stubborn. I should have went to the doctor immediately. Like, I'll be all right. I'm fine. It'll kind of just rub some dirt on it. Mentality with everything.
Right.
And 2 or 3 days have passed, and there have been nothing better. So I go to the doctor, they tell me, you have a severe case of Bell's palsy. And the doctor that I'd come and seen when I got back here, met with him, and Sowards. He said, you're a young kid, man. You're probably gonna, rebound from it good. I know you eat well. I've known him for a while. I know you eat well. I know you're, always working out and everything like that, and so you should rebound, from it. But coming back on it, at that point in time, I was, doing crazy hours where it was like I'd have, I'd be, opening up Plackey Hall at 5:30 in the morning. We'd be starting warm-ups at 5:45, training 2 or 3 teams. I'd go over to Anytime Fitness. 8 to 10 is usually a dead hour, so I would immediately lift, get my lift in, and then it was like client at 11, client at 12, client at 1, maybe I had 2 off, client at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Going home, eating, going to bed, so you're running these, 14, 15-hour days, back to back to back. I was doing extremely well, in my training and in my nutrition and everything like that. I was putting, good weeks back to back, but it was training with extremely high volume, training my tail off, And so, you think of, just the general fatigue and stress on the body. And I feel like I've usually been good at, being able to push stress away, from a day-to-day aspect, going home and, leaving work at work and being able to decompress and stuff. But, looking back on it, I just think it was, the stress levels, the, lack of recovery, all that stuff, and it was just one of those things where, you don't realize you're stressing as much as you probably are. Yeah. And then it catches up to you.
Your tolerance just builds.
And it's kind of, the big man upstairs way, you saying, it's time to slow down.
Excuse me, sir. I know that you've been doing everything proper. You're eating clean as a whistle. You're getting after it. Your condition. Still human. Good job.
Yep. And so, it was honestly a brutal thing. You'd asked me before we made the mics hot, if I was cool talking about it. And it's, it was one of the toughest things that I had to go through in my life. And honest to God, the people that could still look me in the face and not act different, sit there and have a conversation. Because, it took me, and I still have, some residual effect. I'm probably 95% recovered. People won't notice it now, but I still can because I've looked at my face for, 29 years. But it was, I knew right away the people that actually cared because they still treated me the same. They weren't sitting there, looking at my face, what's going on, with Brady. And the ones that really got me through all of it, Adams State football, man. It was, and some of the athletes here that I was working with, it was, instead of like what the hell's going on, it was I can't believe this happened to you, coach. Are you all right? Do you need to talk? And, I think back to that class, Braden Meyer, Ian Friday, all those guys were there when it happened, and I'd taken a couple of weeks off of work. And then it's one of those things, I think the hardest thing about it was, we all have our issues, whether, someone has a family member that's sick, home life isn't what you want it to be at the moment, whatever it may be. Those are easy things that you can hide. Right. But, then when you're walking around and half your face is paralyzed, it's one of those things that everyone's going to see, right? Yeah. So it was very difficult to come in here that first day, and even like Larry, Caitlin and Gersick at the time, they're like, you can take off as much time as you want. And I was like, screw that. I just need to get back to normality, But, coming in and telling all the athletes, this is what's going on. It might come back. It might not. You guys don't got to worry about me. This is your time to get after it, And so I kind of just had that attitude of, full steam ahead. Like, this is something that was thrown at me. There was, a wrench thrown in the plan of normality. Right. But, you wouldn't think like little things how it would affect you. Blowing a whistle was damn near impossible. Yelling across the weight room when you got the volume loud and stuff like that, and so it was, little things those were the things that were frustrating. Right. I'm
sure that there's, some other stuff there where like, you don't want to bother you, but at the same time, like I had scarlet fever. I look like a strawberry Sour Patch man from the chin down. I went to the store to get some lotion for it, right, because I'm itchy like crazy. And these little kids, Mommy!
No, and that's, little kids are like, the most honest. You walk around and it's like, you got some people staring at you wondering what's going on and everything. And, it's one of those things, all of us have had, like, a random thing, like you get a sty on your eye or, like, you wake up and your eyelid's swollen or something's wrong with your face. So all of your, everyone put yourself in that situation, then multiply it by 1,000,000, and it's like it was a tough thing. I was super lucky that, the amount came back that it did. But, it was the same thing, it just took a lot of work. It was like watching grass grow. I remember sitting in front of a mirror and like, just purse your lips, just smile, just blink your damn eye, raise your eyebrows.
Yeah. You go from macro motor patterns to some severely micro motor patterns with a, wicked timeline that's slow, the feedback's slow.
Yep. And so, it was one of those things too, but I feel like adversity, man, it'll make people stronger or it'll absolutely break them.
Absolutely. Well,
and so it was one of those things too, where I just immediately, tried to take the positive out of all of it. But, I cannot say enough about, the community in Alamosa and then Adams State in general. Like, I had so many people to lean on and so many people that just the entire time, Gersick, being one of the top ones, just treating me normal, just literally not, was one of those things where it was just like, man, you talk with certain people and be like, God, they just keep staring at it, and you know, and you're trying to act normal and it's pissing you off and you're trying to be yourself.
You want to snap a little bit.
But,
and that recovery and that support has got to be a testament to you, your character, your authenticity, how you've treated people, right? Because if you'd have been big time in people this whole time in Anytime Fitness and flexing on, weak nerds, or, that is a different story when it comes to your overall support. Because I've known, I've only gotten to really spend time with you over these last couple of years.
Yep.
I've known about just like, oh yeah, that's the guy, But the comments were always, oh, did you play with, with Coach Connor? I was like, no, I didn't play with Coach Connor, but I know him. We're going to say, oh, well, he's super jacked, and he's a great dude, right? Yeah. And those two comments were never, parted.
Yeah.
Right. So kudos to you for building your reputation and loving the steel, and your words about adversity. The barbell, that's definitely been one of the gifts of the game, when it comes into the leaning into resistance and all the great stuff that we get out of here. Like, I was so blessed. Like, that was a thing where positive male role model said, hey, come and exercise and take care of yourself, and when you do good, we cheer you on, right? Yep. And it was definitely one of my gifts of the game. So that's a little segment I got on here. What are your gifts of the game from your experience here playing Adams State football from this weight room? Tell me.
I mean, I got, like I said, I have, a few buddies, lifelong friends, shouldn't call them buddies, lifelong friends, from growing up in Craig. But, the guys that I went through stuff with here, the guys I played won games with, lost games with, sat in class with, hung out on the weekends with, those are the dudes that, we're constantly keeping in contact with each other. Those are the best friends.
And those are the suits at the wedding.
Yep.
Those are the suits.
Yep. And so, like I said, I got a couple of my really close friends from growing up, but then a very large amount of guys that I am just, we're tied together till the end. So, I think you go through all that stuff, and you're not doing it as individuals. You're truly going through it together, and you're seeing your best friend who is, like the hoorah guy who's always positive, one day hits a breaking point, and it's like you got to be there for him.
Yeah.
And you go through, such
let's go get that guy. Hey,
and such.
So-and-so's having some problem. Hey, let's go get him. Let's go take him to Dairy Queen.
Yeah. Let's go to Monty.
Yeah.
So such high highs and such low lows. You really find the inside and outside of who someone truly is at their core. And I think that just, it's, those things where it's like there's no way these friendships won't last forever. Right. But, like every part of Adams State, I feel blessed to, to have made the decision that I did. When talking to Coach Heaton for a half hour after, the Mesa game. Yeah. And it's like I finally get to see, I would never call him Marty, but I finally get to see the Marty. And not just Coach Heaton, and it's like, man,
was a surprisingly pleasant conversation.
Oh, it was insanely pleasant. It was, and you just sit there and you think, about, all the times that you're getting reamed by him.
Yep.
And his,
it's piss poor.
Yep. Grass isn't greener on the other side.
Pride and perfections now.
Yep. And so all the stuff that we went through, but then you look back on it and it's like, man, he always had the best interest for every single person on the 100%. Team.
Loved Adams State.
Yep.
Loves Adams State.
Yep. And just relationships like that. I'll see Coach Wassinger running me around, and it's never a, hey, Coach, how's it going? It is always a, I heard you're at the college, what's going on there, keep me updated.
Drives through my yard special when he's going through with his lady busting up mosquitoes, like, oh, that's AJ's house, dusted her up good.
So, you just get so many relationships, even with the exercise science department, Tracy Robinson, who's still there. And it's, like I was on one of our GA's practicum committees and just going there and seeing her, and it's a half-hour conversation. It's like, it's just so normal for here to just build great relationships, which I feel like is so abnormal in the majority of the world, especially now.
Normal is,
hey, how are you?
Talk
good.
Shit and tweet people and lie to people's face about how you're doing, and then it's not the magic that you get here on this campus, on this team, and specifically in this room, right? you make a great point. Like, you get to see, like, I know what Oscar Villa's soul looks like.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've seen him under 405. I've seen him in fourth quarter, fourth down. And, you know, that's the guy you go, hey, you watch my kids, something, you know, bad happens to me. Like, and it's very encouraging to have an Adams State guy. Not that you always need an Adams State guy to be in charge of Adams State things, but to have someone who's so dedicated, and it's, you know, not only your dedication, but also the stories that you hear from an Ian Friday, right?
Yeah.
Where, you know, Coach Connor changed my attitude on this. And, you know, Ian Friday make some big changes that put him in a position to be an NFL prospect and really make a difference.
Yep.
Steal that from Marty, make a difference.
Yep. Go Mad.
Yeah. Well, I do have a little fireball round I want to go through, but I also want to say thank you. You know, thank you for your time as a player, man. and your contributions to the program now. There's a lot of things that I do want to talk to you about in a follow-up episode, especially, you know, some words to those students that and student athletes that are playing now that do want to get into the strength and conditioning game. I really want to geek out and listen to you. I know Gersick's one of the corners that's built the foundation of your philosophies around strength and conditioning, but I bet you there's some other folks in there too. I'd love to geek out on that a little bit harder, but I want to ask you some good old-fashioned bro questions before we cut this thing up, right? So
fire them off.
Okay, tell me what's in your gear bag, right? As far as, you're going to get a lift in, right? I got a couple of things. I got some of this and some of that, and we'll, you know. But what are some of the must-haves in your gear bag?
All right, number one, you know, and Gers will make fun of me for this, but I am a chalk monster.
Okay.
And so I gotta have chalk, man.
I don't see a chalk bowl around here.
There it is.
Oh, there she blows.
Yeah,
Okay.
behind the desk. But
I need that chalk.
I need it on my back if I'm squatting. I need it on my front shelf if I'm cleaning.
Feels good.
Yeah. So no, I'm a total chalk monster. So that's the number one. Heavy squat day, Ray-Ban knee sleeves.
Oh, yeah,
it's the go-to.
You got the ones that are like that blue camouflage
I got the old
looking?
blue ones.
Yeah.
I got the
or the thick
old
ones.
Yeah, the old thick blue ones that were like, you know, in the Olympics.
7 millimeter or something.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
they're extremely thick.
Okay, you got the knee sleeves. Keep them warm. Keep your sliding and gliding going. What else?
I was, you know, my entire life a weight belt guy, but I haven't been recently. I don't know why.
It's a love-hate relationship.
I don't know why.
Right? It's definitely a tool. Appropriately deployed is good for you, but at the same time, I went through a period where I'd put it on, and then before I said I'd take it off. I don't need this, you know?
Yeah, so I don't know. I've just been more comfortable without it in like the past year. And then the same thing, I used to be always, you know, wrist straps I'd tape up when I was an athlete here, but I've been trying to go away from it as well. I got, you know, obviously my lifters, got my Olympic weightlifting shoes.
What flavor are you rocking? Those Adidas?
So it's Adidas, and they're old. I mean, they're broken in, and they're, you know, fit my foot perfect.
Yeah, that's
so I'm you know, dreading the day that they actually fall apart because I don't want to have to break a new pair in for a year. But yeah, so those bad boys. You know,
if you call them lashes, you got any lashes for, like, you know, we used to have the Harbinger cotton lifting straps.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. So those are, you know, strictly 405 and above.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my rule on that. You know, you need to be able to handle.
Grip strength.
Yeah, you need to be handling 405.
Oh yeah. Yeah, don't make a plate you can't eat, boy. I'd love to just do an episode of cliches and stuff like that for you because they're so funny.
Yep. So I do have some of those. But yeah, I mean, are
you on the smelling salts level?
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. I love salts.
Yeah,
yep, that's exactly what I have. So Juji Mufu. Yep, I have a little bottle of that. So yeah, that's
probably better than Will Trujillo just slapping the piss out of my chest before a set.
Yeah, 5-star, man. It always helps though. It always helps. So
anything else in that bag that you need to talk about?
Gosh, I mean, if I'm traveling, it's, you know, beats. Got to have my headphones. Got to have music loud. So everyone that knows me knows I'm a total metalhead.
Yeah.
And it needs to be on volume 10 out of 10.
So
and
good segue there. So do you have a Spotify playlist?
So I don't have a playlist. I'm an album guy.
Okay.
And so, you know, it's for me, it's if, you know, if I'm wanting to listen to just the song Cowboys from Hell by Pantera. I'm putting on the whole album and listen to it front to back.
Well, good for you.
And so,
that's classy.
Yeah.
That's a classy way to go about being a metalhead.
So
I'm such a promiscuous, I go Wu-Tang Clan, and I'll do all of it.
Yep.
But I like your answer there. Now, you're gonna max out. Pick whatever lift it is that you want. I don't know if you would change
Squat.
the max out. Okay, let's max out squat. You're up. You're gonna go fiddle with the iPod. You're gonna send someone to go do it. What's the song that's coming on for the squat max out?
it is Psycho Holiday, Pantera.
Okay.
And so, it's
It's
just got it all. I mean, the name itself, says it all. It's Psycho Holiday. And so
any certain part, like, are you gonna lift that bar up when this part drops, or
the whole song, man, is just front to back, just so heavy. But and it would be anything, probably Pantera for me.
Okay.
That's usually where I go, and it's like when it's a day, where I'm like, I'm kind of tired. It's like, okay, get 300 milligrams of caffeine in, and just go to Pantera and turn on This Is Pantera on Spotify and just listen to them.
God bless you. God rest in peace, Dimebag Darrell.
Yeah, and Vinnie Paul.
So now let's talk. If you could go back in time,
okay,
right? And maybe you do this specific for you, and you know what your needs are. Or maybe this is just your general advice for that 18-year-old getting ready to come in. What are you going to tell them to put in their shaker cup? And what are you going to tell them to stack up for a supplement regimen? You don't got to go hardcore into this and that, but like some basic things.
So I think, macros or micros affect the macros.
Okay.
One of my favorite, things that I've, ever heard in terms of nutrients. It's like Paul Quinn. It might have been Woodsky.
Okay.
That, had wrote this down somewhere in an article. But it's so basic, it's so easy to remember. Your micronutrients are going to affect your macronutrients. And so good multivitamin.
Okay.
And so I won't say any companies in particular because we're not advertising anyone.
Right?
Right?
I used to take the Mega Man.
So
I've been known to ingest an animal pack every once in a while.
There you go.
I don't know if that's where to go, right? But a good do your own research multivitamin.
Yep. Bring it into your strength and conditioning coach and make sure it is.
Yeah, don't get popped.
Yep.
Right.
And so a good multivitamin, creatine.
Okay.
For sure.
5 grams a day.
5 grams a day, males. 2 to 3 for females.
Okay.
I do like the green supplement, and that is by the Pat Company.
Okay.
So some kind of green supplementation, I think is huge. We would like to believe that every single day nutrient profile in the cafeteria is going to be perfect. But, I feel like even, just
the pizza and burger nutrient.
Some fries and a little bit of Powerade. Even just for adults in general, I think, it's just so huge to have that. Some kind of multi, some kind of creatine, micronized creatine, a green supplementation. If you are someone that, you should fix your sleep habits first. Can't stress that enough. But if you're someone that really has an issue, you struggle with insomnia or whatever it may be, having a little bit of caffeine will help. There's a ton of science behind it that it does help performance. So, having something along that line.
So fix your sleep
first.
And then
supplements or supplement to
and
a
then
good
get some
nutrient
caffeine
lifestyle,
in.
right?
Okay, yeah.
And, some kind of caffeine, something like that. If you're someone that needs it, I'm not a huge fan of branch chains just because I think, you should be eating eggs and you should be eating red meat.
Fair enough.
If you're a vegetarian, that's your own choice. I'm, whatever.
Okay.
But so if you're not someone that's getting those aminos, and your essential amino acids, then having that as a supplementation is extremely important as well. So that's kind of where I go on everything.
So now you're not talking to you anymore. You're talking a little pipsqueak AJ. He's 215, right? He's got we got to get 15 pounds of lean on him. In 6 months. I'm making a post-workout shake. Yeah. What's going in that shake?
Okay, so I got what I call the power shakes.
Power shake. Tell us about
and so I send this out within the summer packets to all the teams. Super easy way to put on weight. Not only nutrient dense, but also calorically dense.
Okay.
For that, it is, you're going to be 8 to 16 ounces of whole milk.
Okay.
You're going to do 1 to 2 scoops of protein, depending. If we're working with a smaller athlete who's 150, you might go on the lower end, but you're working with a kid that's 250 and we want him at 300 pounds.
3 scoops, Webb.
You better load it up on the heavy end. And so you're going to do 1 to 2 cups of milk. You're going to do 1 to 2 scoops of protein. If you're not already getting your creatine in, which usually you take it post-workout, you put your creatine in there. from there, it's, then finding stuff that has some nutrients and some calories. So I like handful of spinach. I like, 1 cup of any fruit that you like, but something that mixes well with that would be like bananas and strawberries, right? Depending on what kind of protein you have. Oatmeal, throwing some kind of oatmeal in there. So, just trying to get a ton of carbs into you. Post-workout's going to be massive too for your next sessions. Then you could do peanut butter in it, help you gain a little weight. You could even do olive oil in it and help you gain a little bit of weight.
Get as weird as you want.
Yep. And then I tell them too, if you want to put ice cream in there, you want to put Hershey syrup in there, whatever you need to do, honey. You could do Greek yogurt as well. So just stuff, you just load it up, right? And so I have it a little bit more structured on our plans, you know. But then at the bottom, I'll say, if there's anything else that you want to put in this, do it. Plain and simple. Right. And so, the whole goal of that shake, number one, is going to be recovery. But then if we have a body transformation goal of putting muscle mass on you, you need to be in a caloric surplus.
Right.
And so.
And drinking is a pretty easy way to do that.
Very easy, very, very easy. And so what I'll tell athletes too is, don't just make one shake. Make 2 or 3 servings of a shake, put it, in a big blender, and then from there, throw it into like 2 or 3 shaker cups.
Batches.
Throw it into your fridge, and then, if you have early weights, you have one right after. You go home and you shower, then you go to the calf, and then you eat. Now you say you have, 3 or 4 classes in a row. At 11 o'clock, you're having another shake. Now at 1 o'clock, you can eat a lunch. Now you're coming and you're watching film and you're going to practice. Right when you get off practice, you're having another shake while you're making dinner, and then an hour, 2 hours after practice, you're having your dinner. So just getting consistent.
So you got your power shake, you're loading it up. It's got the good macros, the good fats. It got a lot of stuff in there. Now give me a smash or pass. I'm gonna list off some foods that if I had to go back, I'd tell little skinny AJ that boiled eggs.
For sure.
Okay.
Love it.
Peanut butter and honey or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Love it. Super cheap. It's one of my favorite things, for athletes in terms of like midday, especially if they're doing early sessions and late sessions. Just a great way to get calories, get some carbohydrates in you, get your glycogen stores up. For
whole milk, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Right? If your body tolerates it, get after it.
Yep.
Okay. White rice.
Love it.
Okay.
It's probably my favorite, carbohydrate that you could take in. A lot of times it doesn't bloat people.
Okay.
It's easily digestible. You don't see a lot of people eating a ton of white rice and getting fat either. And so it's one of those things where it's like you can just tell, it is a nutrient that is very, very good at being turned into an energy substrate, and the body uses it very, very well. So
canned tuna or pouch tuna.
Oh yeah, for sure. Get after it.
I think those are like musts. Of course, get your fresh fruit in and your main, protein courses and your veggies, right? But if I'm thinking back, hey, Webster, you need to be doing 2 peanut butter and jellies. I need you hitting 4 to 8, boiled eggs. Drinking that whole milk, eating that tuna fish, just getting those in, because those are, that's a list because of it. They're also very economical sources of protein, fats, and carbs.
And what I'll tell athletes too is, in terms of nutrients, your most expensive one's going to be your protein. And so I'll tell them, it's kind of a burden, but really it's not a burden when you look at, how successful you're going to be in terms of transforming your body. But be a frequent flyer at City Market or at Safeway or at Walmart, because when stuff goes on sale, that's when you need to buy that protein. And so you don't need to be going like, oh, it's Saturday, we're going to barbecue with the boys and we've already decided we're going to have steaks, and you go get 3 ribeyes for $50. And then a week later you go check them and they're $28. And so it's like you got to be smart about that kind of stuff.
My protein shopping transition, chicken, beef, pork, based off of which one's closest to something a pound. And
what's on sale. And I'm even that way too, and it's, sell by date. Oh, it needs to be sold in 3 days. Well, I'm eating it tonight. So it doesn't matter. Ground, it could be ground beef that's usually $6 a pound, and right now it's on sale for $1.99. And it's like I'm buying 3 of them, and I'm having ground beef the next 3 nights.
And of course, it would behoove us not to push potatoes.
Of course.
Here in the San Luis Valley, getting them fresh off the, fresh out the pasture there in Monte Vista, right? Great source. Got some micronutrients going on in there.
Tons of potassium.
Pretty good for athletes.
No, it's that and white rice are my 2 faves. And like you said, they're so cheap, and that's what I tell them with carbohydrates. It's like shelf life for carbs. It's so easy, to buy a large amount and go through it if you're really trying.
Right.
If you're really trying to eat.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to do a whole other podcast, like what really trying really means as far as developing a relationship with food, so you understand quantities, and that you can, track long enough to where you can eyeball everything, and also monitor your performance at the same time, so you know, yes, I'm recovering. No, I'm not. Yes, I'm bonking in workouts. No, I'm not. Yes, I'm gaining. I'm moving the needle towards my meaningful goals, because I showed up to senior camp at like 220, and I was in really good shape. Not really. It's like borderline unexcusable in some ways. Yeah. But I did the best I could, so I won't beat myself up too much.
No.
But Coach, the shepherd of the steel, right? The leader of the Swole Patrol. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, man.
Appreciate you.
It's been a pleasure. Appreciate you too. Go Grizz. Woo.
That's it for this episode of the Adams State Football Podcast. And before you stop, do me a solid. Go ahead, listen, subscribe, rate, review, and share this episode on your social medias. If you want to stay up to date with the Adams State Football Podcast and other things that are going on with the Adams State Football program, subscribe to the Adams State Football Facebook group. Thanks in advance. Go Adams State.